So I'm Sister Mary McCarrick. I've met some of you, but not all of you. Dr. Noe, I hear you're recuperated.
I'm recuperated.
Wonderful.
Hello.
Wonderful.
Good to see you.
So my topic I was asked to comment on today was the option for the poor and vulnerable, which is one of the 7 key points of Catholic social teaching. So I thought I'd start out with a simple question, which you probably already got from the first speaker, but why would a church have social teaching? So just every human person lives in an environment, social environment. Human behavior is always in a social environment that both motivates it and that the person can try to change. Okay, so family therapy is all about changing the social environment. So in the same way that we, in working with a family, might want to change the environment is to change the individual's life, or in an abusive situation might want to change the environment to change the person's life. Any kind of a church wants to be aware of the environment from which the people come and wants to be aware of ways in which its adherents can change the environment, to make the environment more the environment that of the values of the church. Okay, so that includes, so lifestyle is one thing, but it's much bigger. This idea of social teaching is to affect things much bigger than an individual's lifestyle. To the decisions of the church, the investments of the church, the ways people get politically involved in trying to change some law or practice or something like that. So today our little project is, you don't have to take notes because she's going to send out my notes when we're done. Yeah. So the poor and the vulnerable options are, so every Christian church wants to support the poor and the vulnerable. This is part of the Christian thing. It's very much, especially at the heart of Catholic charities. Catholic charities were brought together in the beginning of the last century to bring together ministries of the poor and the vulnerable in each geographical area. Orphanages and I got it going. Close them out. Orphanages or services, food services, whatever. That was the whole point of Catholic charities. So and of course, Catholic charities, like all the Christian churches, believe that the test of a society, the moral value of a society, is in how the poor and vulnerable are faring, and the decisions made in favor of the poor and vulnerable in a society. So we're going to talk about the Christian Catholic, because the Catholic in this case is not different from the Christian at all, but it's really rooted in the Judeo-Christian tradition, and I think you're familiar with that. So concern for the poor and vulnerable was very much a part of the Judeo world into which Jesus was born. So this would have been part of the milieu in which he grew up and began to preach. So, for example, in Exodus 22, reminds people don't oppress the vulnerable, because God hears the cry of the poor, and so we must never oppress those who are vulnerable. In the Judeo tradition, there were 3 very vulnerable populations: the orphan, the widow, and the stranger. And so that those who believe were asked to take special protection for the orphan, the widow, and the stranger, because in that highly patriarchal society, people without that powerful patriarch to take care of them were extremely vulnerable. And so that was a part of it. In Leviticus, at several places in the book of Leviticus, the people are told that they have to do specific things to support the poor. And so one of these was a portion of the harvest has to go to the poor. Portion of the harvest has to go to the poor. In the 70s, when I worked in a desperately poor area in the southern part of Colorado, the pastor would always remind people who had potato farms or whatever they had. There was even a beautiful strawberry farm, that they must allow people to glean in the fields. When the machines go through and take, what the machines can take, then they have to have days when the fields are available for anyone to come in and take whatever is there. So not to stop these people from making an income, but he would preach on this every year very powerfully, and he never got any pushback. That was just a part of how people lived to take care of those needs. And it's absolutely specifically mentioned in Leviticus as something that has to be allowed. And then Exodus also reminds people of that same kind of thing. And then in Isaiah, and this is interesting, it's connected with worship. So worship is not what you do in church. In Isaiah, the prophet says true worship is when we work for justice and care for the poor and vulnerable. That is our true worship. It's not just these sacrifices and, going to the temple and that kind of thing. And so that's the world. Jesus would have heard that growing up, in spite of living just as we do in a world that does not honor those values. He would have heard in his religious practice that those are values to be considered and lived out. Then, in the life of Jesus, certainly all of us know that actions speak louder than words. We've told how many abused women have we told actions speak louder than words. Don't listen to that. So if we want to look at Jesus' values, we want to know what he did, not just what he said, but what he did. So we know that Jesus spent much of his 3 years of active ministry feeding the poor, multiplying food so that no one was without, healing people of obviously psychiatric and physical ailments, the vulnerable, people who were rejected, and that he always reached out to people who were we would say now, on the margins. So he tells about the Samaritan, he tells about the woman at the well who couldn't even come and draw water with other people because she was so marginalized by her community. So that is a very important part of Jesus's ministry, reaching out to those rejected by society. Then Jesus expressed this when he understood his ministry very clearly in Luke, when he said, "The Spirit of God is upon me. The Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. God has sent me to proclaim freedom to the captives, a recovery of sight for the blind, a year of favor for everyone." And this year of favor was a year when everyone gave up the property that they owned, and the poor had a chance to own property again, whatever, the Jubilee year, the year of favor. So that was what he was talking about. So that's what Jesus understood himself to do, to be called to do, and that's exactly what he did through his ministry. Okay, now, but in the Christian tradition now, so that's all part of the Judeo-Christian tradition. But in the Christian tradition, there's a shift in understanding what's happening. Okay, there's a shift in understanding. So the Christian tradition tells us that Jesus died on the cross and Christ arose from the dead. And so Christ has no body now but ours, no hands, no feet on earth but ours. Ours are the only eyes through which Christ can look in compassion in the world. Ours are the only feet through which Christ can walk to do good. Christ has no body but ours. So in the Christian tradition, every human person is an essential part of the body of Christ. Sometimes we're part of the broken body, sometimes part of the healing body, but that profound respect for each person is the same profound respect we should have for the Eucharist or any other godly worship. So again, you connect that with the Old Testament idea that the true worship is the care of the poor, but add into this, every person is part of Christ. Every person is should be treated with that profound respect. So since that is true, let's see, find another page here. Okay, so Matthew 25:34 tells us that the way you treat the poor is the measure by which you will be judged. So if you could.
Sure. So I'm going to read kind of on the screen here. I'm going to read Matthew 25:34-40 out of the NIV version. It says, "Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, Truly I tell you, whatever you did for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me.
Thank you. So again, a little more delineation of what this is: to feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, caring for the prisoners, freeing, the same kinds of things as Jesus mentioned. And again, but for the specific reason that this is me. This is me you serve. This is God you serve. This is my body that you're nourishing and giving water and giving hope and giving freedom. So that's very much a part of the whole Christian tradition. Okay. Now, going another step, the Catholic Church suggests specific political responses. So responses that will push the government to be more in line with the Christian values. Okay. And because the Catholic Church is big and because it is diverse, it has a possibility sometimes of writing statements that will have impact. And so these letters come out, and they usually come out by the culture. So the response, a political response in Congo is not a political response that makes sense in the United States or Mexico, or whatever. So the Catholic Church in the United States, the Bishops' Conference, the bishops don't write this, they assign it to people to do the research, and they sign off on it. They wrote one called Economic Justice for All. And this is not particularly new, but it is a good, if you ever get a chance to read it, just put it in on the web and it'll pop up. It talks about this changing our society so that the welfare programs are well funded, so that food services are available, so that education has a priority for for children, so that we can change generation after generation. So these letters that come out from the USCCB offer asking for some political response. Excuse me, I touched something.
No, you're okay. Keep going.
I'm sorry. New York State has a Catholic conference, and the Catholic conference's job is to try to find ways in which political advocacy can be done to change state government principles and state laws that are more in keeping with the Christian values. And so once a year, the charities directors and the bishops meet with the staff of the Catholic Conference, and then the staff works both ways. The charities directors hopefully are in tune with what's more on the ground, what's more really happening, and they bring that to the people. So I used to be on the prison and post-prison committee. And so we would bring information from what's working, what's not working. This is how we could really help people that had better post-prison programs. Look, this is working in our area. We bring it together. And then the professionals at the committee, their job was to say, this is something, X is something that could be influenced in this group because these two people in the assembly would be willing to sponsor a bill to make this change. So they would know the inner workings of the assembly and the state senate, and would try then to work with that. And then the bishops would be asked right there at the meeting to stand up and say, who do you have in your area who will support this? Or are you willing to call the assembly members who are part of your diocese and try to make this happen? So the Catholic Church has a more sophisticated sense of the political measurements and on a broader reach throughout the country to try to make those influences happen. So it's important when you hear from your constituents, your staff people, this isn't working, that isn't working, now a lot right now, we know it's not working. But it's important that that information gets up to people who know the political system well enough to say this could be influenced. We haven't got a chance with this particular group to make an influence. Now, I want to talk specifically about where Catholic Charities fits in this. You ready to go with me here? It's pretty challenging. I maintain that the familiar story of the Samaritan, the Good Samaritan, is where Catholic Charities fits in this project. Okay. Why don't we switch things?
Okay. I got this one. Okay. The Gospel according to St. Luke. There was a scholar of the law who stood up to test him and said, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said to him, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" He said to him in reply, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your being, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." He replied to him, "You have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live." But because he wished to justify himself, he said to Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man fell victim to robbers, and as he went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, they stripped and beat him, went off, leaving him dead. A priest happened to be going down that road, but when he saw him, he passed by on the opposite side. Likewise, a Levite came to the place, and when he saw him, he passed by on the opposite side. But a Samaritan traveler who came upon him was moved with compassion at the sight. He approached the victim, poured oil and wine over his wounds, and bandaged them. Then he lifted him up on his own animal and took him to an inn and cared for him. The next day, he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper with the instruction, "Take care of him. If you spend more than what I have given you, I shall repay you on my way back." Which of these 3, in your opinion, was a neighbor to the robber's victim? He answered, "The one who treated him with mercy." And Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise."
In this story, the priest always gets a bad rap here, okay? But let me explain his position, and you'll see it's a legitimate position, okay? So the Jewish, at that time in history, it was what you call a purity cult. If you want to get to God, you follow these rules and you keep yourself pure and clean and whatever. So you can pay your ransom price to God. You have to work your way up to be godly. And so a lot of the rules were very rigidly kept. They had to be rigidly kept. So this priest was on his way to, if you think of it this way, as if there were only one priest in New York State and only one day of the year when he could say mass. And so the people were going to gather and come together to participate in this worship. He couldn't be late. If he was a day late, they weren't going to be able to do it because it had to be done on the holy day. And he couldn't come unclean. And unclean one of the things that would make him unclean would be to touch blood, to touch blood, to get physically dirty. And that would make him unclean. And so in a way, can you understand the priest's position? Even though you might not like the position or you might not do it yourself, that's how he was doing. He was acting out of this sense of purity, that he has to keep himself clean, and he has only this one little window of opportunity to offer this worship, which will bring consolation and healing and hope to the community. Okay, that's not who Catholic Charities is. We're not about keeping ourselves clean. We're not about protecting ourselves. We're not about doing things at a certain time and in a certain way. We hope that what Catholic Charities is about is something quite different. It's like what the Samaritan was about, noticing the needs and responding to them out of compassion, to be moved as that person was by compassion, by our experience and our heart for those in need, and then to care for them out of our own means. That's why it's always so hard if the appeal doesn't make the goal. We have fewer means out of which to care for the poor and vulnerable. But that's our call as Catholic Charities. And I think that we're all doing that. And however you see yourself in the organization, we're doing that. Whether you're ministering to mentally ill, whether you're supporting at intake people who need food, clothing, medicine, shelter, helping them find that. You're supporting a suffering family in therapy. Whether you're raising the money that allows the mission to happen. You can't provide out of our means if we don't have the means to support them, or whether you're providing assuring the financial integrity that underpins all of our work, without which we have no place from which to serve. So every one of us is supporting that kind of a need. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Would you let's take a moment and think about something that comes to mind, some way in which you understand yourself to be the neighbor of the poor and the vulnerable. Well, what comes to my mind of all my clients and my years of having clients, this woman came named Carol. So Carol was a white woman who had a black partner, and because of that, her family wanted nothing to do with her, and they completely abandoned her. And she very, very much wanted to get a job, but she could not read or write. She couldn't read or write. So clearly, she had been through school, but in special ed and all this kind of stuff. So there was a hot dog place in the area where it was looking for employment. And she had tried for her GED a couple times. This clearly was going to require more than just sitting in the classroom. So she and I went to the hot dog place and developed a little pictographs so she could tell the person in the kitchen what they wanted. So she drew these little hot dogs, and then and this person completely accepted this, God bless them, the cook. And so she was able to get a job, keep a job, and take care of her son who had giantism. He died, you die very soon with giantism. But anyway, so it was it. Accepting her where she was at, recognizing her limitations, and helping her find a place. Now, come on, you must have some good stories.
I think every time I walk into Ladies of Charity, there always seems to be some. It was just the other day that there was confusion about whether a referral came through or didn't. They were maybe came from 525 Washington, but they were there, and this woman was there for a clothing referral. But the ladies who were working in the store didn't have the referral, and they thought that she's been here she's been here before, she's been here recently, and couldn't seem to see around that this woman needed clothes. So I said, she's here for a reason. These are more or less free clothes that we have in our store. Yes, we'll figure it out. Please give her these, whatever, let her choose within the reason, what she's allotted, and we'll fill out a referral ourselves and we'll get credit for serving her. And she'll have her clothes and maybe she'll come back next month too, but it means she needs them. So that was a conversation I just had, but I've had those
Yeah,
times.
it's a perfect example. Moved with compassion and responding out of our resources that we have. Yeah, perfect. Okay, you must have a few.
Oh, I have a lot.
Well, one would be enough.
The first thing was, as a counselor, I had a gentleman that had a sensitivity to chemicals and a lot of foods. And he would go to a pantry and they would just have whatever food they had, but he would need organic food. So I called Dee Dee, does she still work here? Yeah. Is she still, okay. And I said, this is what the situation is. And she said, well, we get food from Trader Joe's that's organic sometimes. So I said, could you arrange to have it with his name on it at the pantry that he goes to? And she arranged that for him. So that was just one little story, or help somebody out who, we can help people out with food all the time, but when they have special needs, what do we do then, right? It's a little more of a challenge.
Are you gonna? Come on. Come on.
I'll tell them. The Holy Family came to this building.
A little louder.
The Holy Family came to this building week before Christmas. Remember when we had the snowstorm of that three years ago? And the storm was bearing down the city. And the city was going home, right? The storm was emptying out, and this mom, dad, and the little boy showed up on our doorstep. A taxi dropped them off. They were from, I want to say, Venezuela. But they were basically just trying to find their way. And we brought them in the conference room. I got in my car and drove over to McDonald's to buy them food because they hadn't eaten all day. And that was an adventure because during pandemic, of course, the McDonald's is still really slow. We brought them back McDonald's food, and the little boy was thrilled because he had McDonald's, Sorry, it's not healthy, but it's all we had, right? And we ultimately got them into a hotel so we could get, and then once the storm passed, we were able to, sort of get them on their way. But reflecting, and everybody chipped in. Like we had people from finance came in and said, "Oh, we had these cookies upstairs," and someone else came and it was sort of a little group effort for the handful of us who were in the building. And I reflected on it, and I thought, here we are, it's Christmas. It was a mom, dad, and a little boy, and I thought, it's the Holy Family. Isn't that great? Yeah.
Beautiful. Don't be shy.
It's in the everyday and just being present and asking questions of people so they, they'll open up and tell you their needs. I helped a woman once who was human trafficked to get on her feet, safe place to live. She had education and an MBA and she's thriving, but I think like what would have happened if somebody didn't take the time to listen and see what she needed and be able to help. And that's what God does. He puts us in those places to be able to respond. So you think of a lot of examples that our people do every day, to just listen.
So
Loud.
for me, I wear my hats for the agency. Clients on the scooter and trying to see offices. My clients are the people around this table, the people that work in the agency. We've been having conversations now about, it doesn't matter what role you're in Catholic Charities, we're all caregivers. And so, I've been here for almost 4 years. And my focus has been removing some of the, just some of the fear, I think, that exists around the positions that I hold, right? And to create an environment, and this might sound counterintuitive coming from the quality officer, but an environment where it's okay to make a mistake. And so I try to do that in a lot of ways, just like Molly said, right? Even the messaging that I use, I have the compliance messages that go out once a quarter. These are messages with compliance topics coming from my, twin Yorkshire Terriers that we have at our house. But more recently, we've had a series of very minor privacy breaches, right? Where people have made a simple mistake and gave PHI to somebody that shouldn't have them. And we know about all of those because the people self-reported, because they came forward and said, I made this mistake and I know that it was in violation of our policies and I need help fixing it. And I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of creating an environment where people feel comfortable and safe coming forward and saying, I made a mistake and I need help. And that's how I can help our caregivers provide care to our clients.
You have some passion on them. Anybody else? Can you ask them online?
Yeah, you can ask me.
Okay, I'm asking people online. I don't know. Can anybody online want to share a little something? Megan? You've got to have a lot of stories.
So, so
A
I,
little louder, Megan.
oh, okay. Oops. Yep, microphone's on there. Okay, so I do have a lot of stories, but what I was gonna share is actually, kind of echoing Den's statement that my current role is more, internally focused with the agency, and so I feel like, I feel very, fortunate to be in this role of really working with all of the operations team and everybody in the agency, but most closely with the directors that are in the chains of all the people who are, out there in the community doing those services. And sometimes it's just to talk things out, and sometimes it's actual like strategic planning, as my title suggests, of what does the community need? You tell me what your people are seeing. How can we figure out, how we best fit? And that's, I think, kind of a slightly removed way to make sure that the services are actually, maybe we can find alternative ways to provide services, especially with limited funding.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Other type, fortunately, we don't often see, but I visited with a fellow Vincentian last year. A young woman with two little children who had moved into an apartment over on the east side and was told that the apartment would be rented to her as it was. And unfortunately, when she got there, the stove and the refrigerator had been taken out, probably sold, and left her without anything but the four walls and three rooms. The woman worked down the street at a restaurant, and she was able to use their kitchen facility. She stored some food in there, and she also used their stove to prepare meals for herself and her two children. So she called the St. Vincent de Paul Society asking for help, and we went to visit, and we were able to provide her the funds to go down to the St. Vincent de Paul store on Main Street and get a refrigerator and a small stove that she could put in the apartment. But it called to mind the fact that there are a lot of victims out there that we may not be aware of who are struggling to get by and do the best they can, as this woman did, availing herself of her employment opportunity in the restaurant to heat and chill the food that she had to have for her family.
Thank you. Well, thank you all. I think I'm over time.
No, you're doing
Okay.
You're doing okay.
I'm over time. I hope nobody's clients waiting. That wouldn't be good. Thank you all. It's been nice to see you, familiar and unfamiliar. Thank you very much for your time. I especially appreciate your coming here.
Thank you, sister.
Finish this up?
Yeah.
Okay,
All right. Wonderful opportunity.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh.
Thank
thank you. Thank you. Well, anybody else want to comment or questions or complain?
Oh my gosh, it's so easy today.
Oh,
I love that